are thrilled to have you here with us today at Auburn to have this very important conversation about inclusion and diversity. So let's jump right into the questions. As you reflect on inclusion and diversity, what do those ideas mean for today's students, and what do those ideas mean at Apple?
Let me first say how great it is to be back here. There is no place in the world that I would rather be than here. And where you will. Brings back a lot of memories, and I often think that Auburn is really not a place. It's a feeling and a spirit. And fortunately, it's with you for all the days of your life. And, or it has been mine, and I wish that for you as well. So now, back to the questions. If I were a student today, I would be thinking about what life is going to be like in your world as you proceed into to working and building your career and your family. And the reality of that is that the world is much more intertwined today, I mean, much more so than it was when I was coming out of school. And part of that means that in order for you to be successful, you really need to have a deep understanding of cultures around the world. The U.S. has 350 million people or so. India has over 1 million. China has well over 1 million. There's a lot of people in other countries around the world. And you're likely going to work in a company where you're not only going to work with people from other countries, but you're going to serve customers and users from all these countries. And so having perspectives and not only understanding, but sort of trying to see things from their lens. There's a number of you that are foreign students in here today, and you probably have a good feeling for what I'm talking about, but everybody doesn't have a Western view of the world. Everybody doesn't have a Southern view of the world. And I have learned to not just appreciate this, but celebrate it. And the thing that makes the world so interesting is our differences, not our similarities. And so I would be thinking about that if I were you. I would also, and this is more of an opinion now that you can feel free to cast aside, you may not agree with this, but my own perspective is that each generation has the responsibility to enlarge the definition of human rights. Each of us has that responsibility. Because sitting here today, you and I wouldn't be on stage if people before us weren't working hard to enlarge the definition of human rights. And several of you in the audience wouldn't be in the audience. And so I feel a tremendous responsibility personally to really reflect on what I can do to help enlarge the definition of human rights. Now, from an Apple point of view, all of those things apply. But the other thing that applies is that we believe that you can only create a great product with a diverse team, that you do much better work with a diverse team. And I'm talking about the large definition of diversity, which is, Apple's products. What are the reasons why I hope you think they work really great? Is that the people working on them are not only engineers and computer scientists, but artists and musicians. And so it's this intersection of the liberal arts and the humanities with technology that makes products that are magical. And that's a level of diversity by itself. We also believe that diversity is not only the things that you can see when you look at people, but it's the invisible things as well. Right? There's a lot of things about people that make them diverse other than the things that are visible. I think that the U.S. in general has sort of an archaic view of diversity. You know, like the EEOC to me is a very old view of diversity. Let me give you an example of this. If you go to most kind of forms that you fill out to check what you are, Caucasian, African American, etc., you get to a block on there and it says Asian. And this is a very old Western view of the world. Because if you've ever met somebody from Japan that grew up in Japan, and then you met someone from Korea, and then you met someone from China, you would think it was very bizarre that the U.S. thought of all of those as one. I mean, it's very, very different. And so we try to so we don't follow the roadmap of the traditional view. We take a very broad view of diversity, and we really seek diversity of thought, diversity of life experience, because it's these things that really that create the best products.
Yes. The second question sort of dovetails the first.
Yeah.
From your view as CEO, how do those benefits of diversity sort of play out every day at Apple?
Yeah, and it really goes back to create a lot better products. You have, if you're in marketing and your role is to advertise, you can imagine if your advertising team was homogenous, what the ad might be like. And I don't mean just the demographics that are in the ad, but how it speaks to people. You really need people from different limbs to work on that, or you wind up really falling flat. You see examples of that sort of every day where you can tell. I can tell by looking at something about the team that created it. And so it's 1,000 things. It's not only product, it's advertising, it's even things like what your sources of supply. What is your lens on the world? We have tens of millions of application developers around the world that work in our ecosystem. And these folks, this is like the UN of people, really, because you can be an entrepreneur from your basement and sell to the world. It's an unbelievable thing. And sort of providing tools for those folks and encouragement for those folks, you really need to understand the lens that they see the world under. And so I think this is an incredibly important topic, regardless of what field that you're in, and frankly, regardless of where you choose to do the work. You don't need to leave the United States or leave Alabama or leave Auburn for diversity and inclusion to be incredibly important to your future success.
Can you talk with us a little bit about American free speech and individual and organizational responsibility regarding uncivil and harmful speech?
Yeah, freedom to protest the government, freedom of religion. You think of these are inherently American things, right? It's the ability to decide your course and to put all of your weight into deciding, which direction that you're going. And so my own perspective is those civil liberties are so important to be an American that as Americans, we should take the widest possible aperture on what they are. Now, does freedom of speech have a limit? Of course, if somebody stood up and yelled, "Fire!" This is not a good example of free speech, right? There is a inherent some limitation. But I think we have to be as citizens, we should take the broadest possible definition. And that means allowing a lot of things that we don't like, that we don't agree with. And in some ways, I think all of us owe it to ourselves to listen to it. Because we need to challenge our own thinking and allow for the possibility that we're wrong on something. That our view is not correct and that we should change our view. And so I know on campuses, on some campuses, there's this tension between conservative and liberal. And I would encourage students everywhere to, instead of tension, for the liberals to listen to the conservatives and for the conservatives to listen to the liberals and actually show the country that not only can ideologies coexist, but that if they interface, they can come up with incredible ideas and move forward. So I am a big believer in these civil liberties. This is why we have a military. This is why we've been to war. We fight for these. These are uniquely American. Last year, Apple fought the U.S. government over a privacy and security issue. This was exactly about civil liberties. This was about, which was a bizarre kind of case, because the government should be the defender of civil liberties. But in that particular case, they were not. And so we found the situation we were in, that we needed to defend the civil liberties of citizens. And so I do think this is an incredibly important topic.
Talk to us a bit, particularly for today's students, the importance of cultural competence, a global mindset, and a spirit of adventure.
I think there's probably different terms that I would use, but I think having not only knowledge, but to embrace other cultures is so important. I talked about that a little bit. Having a global mindset, there's obviously a tension in many countries in the world now between globalization and more nationalism. And these kind of feelings are probably growing right now to a level that it's been a while since I've seen in my lifetime. And the truth is that globalization has helped a lot of people, but it's also hurt people. And I think what we have to do figure out what we need to do to help everybody. And so I think from a student point of view, it's very important to have a global mindset. You know, if you're I mentioned developers earlier, but I visited some developers in Germany a few weeks ago, and women entrepreneurs had started a company right out of college. They met in their dorm environment, and they were really into cooking and decided to start a whole company based on cooking and training people to cook. They told me they got started and they thought people in Germany might like what they were doing. And within 2 weeks, they were selling to 40 different countries in the world. And all of a sudden, the vast majority of their business, guess what? It was outside of Germany. And so what did they have to do quickly? They had to start thinking about, what do those users want? Because just like the South has its unique food, Germany has its unique food, but everybody else has their unique food. And so you have to understand, that's a sort of a simple example. But there are so many others like that whether you're in a small startup like that, to a company like Apple or many other companies, the likelihood is strong that the vast majority of the sales of the company that you're going to work for are going to be from other countries. That doesn't mean you're not successful here. It just means there's a lot more people in those other countries in the aggregate, right? And so I think having a global mindset on things is to your advantage. And I would encourage everybody to really think through that. In terms of the spirit of adventure, if you're like me, you will always prefer home. It's the feeling I get when I come here. But that doesn't mean that I don't love other places and that I don't, love going to understand how the Italians live and how the Japanese live and how the Chinese live and how the Israelis live and on and on. I could go through every country in the world, I suppose. Because it's really, there are great people in the world. It's a fabulous, you live at the best time ever in the history of the world. You are at it. You may not feel like it all the time, but it really is. And sort of getting out and understanding the other countries and having the mindset, not, they don't look like me, they don't think like me, they don't do this like me, but being curious, being intellectually curious about how other people look at things, do things, what their daily lives are like. This is incredibly important.
What is your role as a CEO, and certainly a CEO of your stature, in providing leadership to the major global challenges that exist in the world? Challenges like hunger, and challenges like disease.
I think, business went through a period of time where, and I'm not saying that everybody's out of this today, but most businesses went through a course where they felt like their jobs were profits, that their job was to make money, and that happens, I would argue, in a case like that is the employees in the company are taken care of. You wind up mistreating people. You mistreat the business partners or don't treat them well. And you leave your community worse off. And in the long term, I would argue that doesn't even maximize profit. It might for the 90-day reporting clock, but for us, and the way that we look at it, we think about what things do we have standing in? What things do we have a point of view or an expertise to bring to bear on that are important in the world or in the communities that we're in? And for us, those things are education. Because Apple has been in education for its entire existence as a company. Steve's vision at the beginning was to have a computer in every classroom. Of course, that vision got a lot larger over time. But we have a point of view there, and we believe that education is a base civil right. And we think that everybody deserves a great education. And the biggest problem that the world faces now is that doesn't happen. Is that education too often is based on the location that you happen to be born in, and how good the public school system in that particular area is. And so we're out trying to help underserved schools and underprivileged kids in this regard. We also care deeply about the environment. And so we want to, we set the goal early on to run Apple on 100% renewable energy, because we want to leave the world better than we found it. And we're so proud that today we run all of Apple in the United States on 100% renewable energy. And we also do that in China. And we're trying to be sort of the ripple in the pond that other companies say, well, if they can do that, I should be able to do that. And we try to do it in a way where it's not a company that has a little more profits doing it, but it's a way that even people that say, I'm only going to do it if it has an ROI, that they can do it. We've tried hard to advance human rights, not only in the United States, but in other countries around the world, including countries that are in a not great state there. And so these are things that we feel very passionate about in privacy, our customers' privacy. We think that the world of technology is making incredible things available and bringing out capabilities that before were never dreamed of before, but they put your privacy at risk. In some cases, incredible ways. Companies are building huge profiles of you. And we think that it's, with the hacking community just scaling up, and not only the hobbyist hacker, but really sophisticated enterprises hacking, we've tried to put a lot of attention into privacy and security for our customers, because we know everybody can't have a PhD degree that wants to use an iPhone. So we feel an obligation. And so we've thought about those things and put a lot of energy behind those. They have an intersection with our business. They are things we understand and have standing about. But we work on policy things as opposed to politics. So we stay out of politics. We don't, for example, Apple doesn't have a political action committee. We're probably the only large company in America that doesn't have one. Maybe one of the few companies, probably. We don't have one. If I donate to a candidate, I do to under my name. And so it's transparent and public. But Apple doesn't donate a penny. I don't believe in using the shareholders' money for political campaigns. But we do push hard on policy. Because policy is so important. So we play in that.
corporations pay close attention to the development of company culture and of values. From your perspective, what does it take to create and sustain an inclusive culture? And then a related question, how have you been involved in setting the course for leadership expectations in this regard as CEO of Apple?
I think a company's culture is the single most important thing in a company. Because without the right culture, it doesn't create great products, it doesn't produce great things. And in order to be great, and by definition, it has to be inclusive and diverse. And I think it's the top job of the CEO to do that. Does the CEO own it solely? No, because if you have a company with any number of people in it, the CEO can't do anything by him or herself, right? It's up to everyone to protect and defend the culture. And for us, we think that Apple's culture is unique and a huge competitive advantage and something very special. A number of us have worked in some other places, and we know the distinction between the Apple culture and another different kind of company. And so this is a fight to the death thing for us. It's that important, right? It's a First Amendment thing, if you will, right? It's one of these things that are at the core of who we are. What does this mean? It means treating each other with dignity and respect. It means you hire wicked smart people who want to change the world. It means you bring people in that are intellectually curious, that want to know how things happen, that try to see around the corner to the next thing. People that are team players, people that really major on collaboration. Because we know that the best things come out of two people caring about something so deeply. When they begin to talk to each other and bounce things off of each other, the ideas get better. The ideas advance far beyond what one of them. And when you multiply that by more people than two, it's exponentially great. We despise politics, and so we don't hire politicians and don't retain them. We don't believe in bureaucracy. We are sort of a flat organization. So if somebody wants to tell me I'm screwing up, it doesn't matter what level of the company they are, they can tell me I'm screwing up. And so that's what it means to us. It's staying, in some ways, it's a startup kind of culture with a company that just has the privilege of having a reasonable balance sheet and not has to worry about raising money and so forth.